So, very good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this special seminar jointly organized by the Food and Beverage Business Group of Dubai Chamber and Federation of Chambers Israel for the food manufacturers of UAE. Today is a very special session where we are trying to bring two markets together, explore new opportunities for the food and beverage sector or food and beverage manufacturers of UAE. I'd like to welcome all the panelists who have taken special time to actually prepare and come for the session. And also all the members who have registered. We have more than 150 registered. We have at present around 70 people already in the session already together. So without much delay, I'd like to get into the proceedings. I'd like to ask Mr. Rowan Shishal to actually give the opening remarks for this session. He's a chairman, he's a head and chairman of the food and beverage sector of the Federation of Chambers of Israel. Thank you very much. Over to you, sir.
Shalom from Israel. Salam alaikum in Israel. It was my honor to be in Dubai beginning of December together with the delegation of Bank Leumi, Kalkalist and Channel 13. We were there for 2.5, 3 days, and I was very surprised how big are the opportunities for both countries to work together. Although I know that all the last years, Israel and Dubai, Emirates were working together in non-official way. The big cooperation between those two countries will bring together the strengths of the economies. Dubai have a very strong, Emirates have a very strong economy, and as you know, Israel as well. Very, very strong economy, small countries, around 9 million people each one, but the people, they just want to work, doing everything what they can in order to succeed and to build a good country among our area. The good relations between Israel, Emirates, and all the other countries around lately, Morocco, Egypt, Jordan, and I'm sure that the next one will be very soon, will bring light to all our area. Just to tell you some small things about our company, we are a family-owned company, Lyman Schlissel, in the food and chocolate sweets business. And it was established, I will send to everyone afterwards the presentation, the film of our company. I hope Shlomit will do it. And it was established in Germany, Berlin, 1919, 1935, thank God they were running back to Palestine, Israel. And then we start to establish a business. And I entered my parents' business that was about 6 employees. I was employee number 7. And now we are over 500 employees. We are working all over Israel, but more information you will get through the film. Just a small, very important point. We have joint venture company with Palestine, and we have those partners there in Gaza, in Nablus, in Jerusalem, and the business is working wonderful. I remember once I gave a lecture in Germany in the German language for 350 German business people, manufacturers, and I showed them the business film presentation, and they saw that we are working with Palestine together, etc. One of them stand up in German and said, "How can you work with your enemies?" I said, "They are not enemies. We are business people." And they like the same what you like. He asked me, "What do I like?" And I told him, "You like what I like and what they like, music." And he said to me, "How do you know which music I like?" I told him, all of us like the same music, The Voice of the Money on the Way to the Bank. And this is the best music that brings peace all over the world. So I am happy to open this event, and I wish all of us together, first of all, a healthy year. We will get out of the COVID corona and start again business as usual. Have a good day. Thank you. Toda rabba.
Thank you, Mr. Ben. Thank you very much. Now
I forgot to welcome my partner in Dubai, Mr. Salah Abdallah Luita. I'm sorry, but I'm sure that we will meet again. Maybe we met also in Dubai together with the Bank Leumi people that were there, 73 business people of Bank Leumi. By the way, the general manager of Bank Leumi, I am his uncle.
Excellent. Looking to meet you, Mr. Robin.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Without much ado, I'd like to now ask our chairman, Food and Beverage Business Group, Dubai Chamber of Commerce, to actually address the session.
First of all, good morning, everybody. And I'm really happy and thankful to Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Israel Chamber of Commerce of giving us this opportunity where we can work together going forward. All of you know Dubai and the UAE being a very proactive government. So they've been taking initiative to set the stage for the living after post-COVID-19. And this is what makes us, I think, in our region as a hub or a role model for the other cities, other countries to look into what we are doing. With this chance, right now, having our private sectors and government sector working together to take this initiative forward, I just wanted to highlight that we and the UAE are really excited, happy for the Abraham Accords and the economic agreement which being signed by both countries, which will set the stage for private sector for the next phase, for not only the region, even for the overall world, in terms of peace and terms of prosperity. As you know, UAE have three main elements which make it really stand out compared to the other countries. One is the location in the region. The other one is the infrastructure. We have a great infrastructure for logistics, for supply chain. And the last thing is our logistic capabilities. You talk about sea freight, you talk about air, you talk about land. We've been set in a way where we really can help both countries benefit from each other. As you know, we have this great advantage, and Israel overall companies also have great expertise, technology, which both countries can benefit from. And as I said, I'm really looking forward for this cooperations to bring peace, not only for the region, even for the overall world, working together as partners and helping our members growing and developing their businesses. In the end, I would like really to thank Robin, Levis, Wahid, and the people who've been working very hard to set the stage for this meeting today. Back to you, Wahid.
Can I say something?
Yes.
My good friend, my new friend, thank you very much. I am sure that everything what you said and I said can be done, because if the two sides want to do, they do. If they just talk and they don't want to do, nothing will happen. But from my experience during my visit in Dubai, I want to tell you that I met a round table of business people in the food business, and we start immediately a business with one company, and the goods will be very soon on the way because I understood that they like the same what we like, music. So we're on the right way. Thank you very much, and we would be more than happy to come and to participate in the golf fair in February. Hopefully, the corona will allow us. Anyhow, for me, no problem, because I'm taking the second injection Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Looking for our meeting in February.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like now to introduce Levi, who's the Vice President of the International Relationship for the Federation of Chamber of Commerce of Israel. Over to you to give us an overview of the market opportunity.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you everybody. And this is the great opportunity to thank you and to thank the F&B group, Jusino and Niall and Abdul, of course, yourself and Ryan and everybody who's involved there under the leadership of Mr. Salah. You have, I think one of the best business groups, and we're excited to have these collaborations with you. So welcome everybody. My name is Levi. I'm the VP of International at the FICC, the Federation of Israeli Chamber of Commerce. We're the biggest business organization in Israel. And we work in a very close partnerships with the Dubai Chamber of Commerce. And this is also the opportunity to thank the amazing team of the Dubai Chamber of Commerce for their partnerships and friendship. From the beginning of the Abraham Accord, we are valuing a lot their collaborations with the Dubai Chamber and their outreach to the business community within Dubai. And one of the things that we're doing is exactly that. We're trying to go by verticals. Having the first vertical is actually F&B. So we have a very good collaborations today that starts today, basically, between our food division and the F&B sector in the UAE. Now, just to talk a little bit about our food division, we basically associate all the Israeli importers, wholesalers, retailers, and manufacturers in Israel. So we have a huge amount of database within our food division within the chamber that basically consists all the players in the food industry, food and beverages industry in Israel, including, by the way, importers of beverages, etc., etc. So we are basically, the FICC is a one-stop shop. And as part of our partnership with the Dubai Chamber of Commerce and with the F&B sector group here, we are offering our services to any UAE company who are either looking to export to Israel, which is the topic of today's discussion, or companies who are looking to source technology or to do some sort of a joint venture and stuff like that, which will be the topic of other discussions. And we have some other plans together with Abdul to do some stuff as well on that. We have a great webinar for you today. Basically, all you need to know in order to scope the market and understand what's your go-to market and whether the Israeli market is a market for you. Now, a lot of people think of the Israeli market as a small market. I'll touch upon that. We'll talk about the potential. But just to introduce a little bit what you're going to have in store for you in the next 40 minutes. So you're going to have an amazing presentation by the head of the biggest retail chain, Corinne, who's going to talk about the market size and what's the food market has done post-corona and before corona and before the COVID, and a little bit about the market size and potential. And obviously, we'll introduce Supercell, which is basically the biggest retail chain in Israel, food retail chain. We're going to talk about regulation. We're going to talk about kosher, and we're going to have a lot of room to do Q&A. So before we're going to start that, I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of, I'm going to talk to you only about one slide, and this would be it. Why you should look at Israel as an export destination. And I'll do it very quickly in order to give the food experts more room with their discussions. So, let me just start by this. A lot of people, think of Israel as a relatively small market. We are 9.2 million people in population. However, our population is growing rapidly. In 2050, we're going to double our population. We're going to become 17 million people. So that's a great trend. There's going to be a lot more mouths to feed. Secondly, it's a very, very strong economy. Our GDP per capita is 43,000. It's more than Japan. We're continually growing. If you look at the macro indicators, and I'll show you them now, you see that in the last decade, the Israeli economy has done very well. We almost doubled itself, both in the GDP, business product, and private consumption. We entered the COVID very, very good. Our unemployment rate was in a one of the lowest in the world in 3.8%. And currently our shekel is one of the highest and most valued currencies in the world. This is a 2009 figure, which was 3.5, 3.6. Today is 3.1. It means that we have much more purchasing power. And as you can see, the macro indicators shows that Israel has entered the COVID quite well. Corinne will talk about how we're going to exit the COVID, but we're doing very well. And until now, 20% of the population has got vaccine, and by March, everyone from 16 up is going to be vaccinated. Going back to this slide, why you need to look at Israel as an export destination. So we're talking about a strong economy, high population growth, 17 million people, developed economy, very crowded, very sophisticated. It's a Western market for any indication. A lot of international companies. You need to know that when you're entering Israel, that it's you have to be competitive. Whether if you have good, attractive prices, good quality, and obviously something that the market has a unique. And we have a very strong purchasing power with a very strong currency. Another element that I want to talk about really, really quick is the fact that we have a very good business culture. As you will find out, unless you already interacted with Israelis are very direct, they're very on point, and they're very easy to interact with. It's basically very much Americanized. It's very similar to Dubai in that sense. I mean, it's very, very close, and there's no problem doing business. No unique aspect of culture that you need to adjust to. And my last point is that it's actually a very good ROI for exporters because all the things that I've just mentioned. Also, in terms of logistics, it's not, a lot of exporters usually come and they want to go to those big markets like Germany, China, United States, something like that. And there's other aspects of how much you invest in order to get your returns from that market. In Israel, I think the investment is quite low in order to penetrate the market, and your return is quite high. One aspect of it is the logistics aspect. 70% of the population is within 1 hour drive of Israel. This is the map of Israel, actually. You can see it's basically roughly the size of New Jersey. You can drive from the northern part to the southern part in 6 hours. So it is a very good place to look as an export destination. And for you, based on the UAE, I would say 3 hour flight, you're going to have 1 hour, 100 weekly flights. I'm hearing an echo, Shavit. There's 100 weekly flights. There's going to be zero problem with logistics. I think it's going to be relatively cheap. And you can come in the morning, do your business talks, and leave in the afternoon. Of course, have fun in Tel Aviv, always a good thing. So with that, I'll finish, and I'll introduce the next speaker. But I really recommend you to come to Israel. And once you come, together with the collaborations that the FICC has with the Dubai Chamber of Commerce and the F&B group, you will have a very soft landing here and a very strong launch pad. We can help you with information with regulations, with customs issues, and of course with the business matchmaking free of charge to every member of the F&B group and the Dubai Chamber of Commerce. So that's part of our partnership, and you're welcome to make use of it. More than that, I'll just say that we can put you in touch with almost all the Israeli importers and retailers. And even now, that's a great segue for our next speaker. And I'm really delighted that we have Corinne with us today. Corinne Kettner is the head of the private label and Supersal, which I mentioned before, is the biggest retail group in Israel. By far, she will introduce Supersal in a second, but I just want to say that she has done an amazing job taking the division of the PL from where it was to where it is today, becoming, I'm not sure, like the fourth or the third largest supplier of the chain and one of the biggest players in F&B in Israel in general. So very happy to have Corinne with us. And Corinne, please take it away.
Thank you, Zev. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm very honored to be here, very excited. I'll correct you after. We're the first largest supplier of the chain, and we're the fourth biggest supplier of the whole market. But I prepared a presentation, and let's start away. There we go. So, hi everyone, I'm Corinne. I'm from Shufersal. I'll have a small presentation, a short presentation about the food market. Let's start with Israel. Israel is a very diverse country, a land of many faces. It's a very young country. It was established in 1948. Its main cities are Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and Haifa. Every city is very different from one another. We have a very unique mix of cultures, of habits, of views. You can walk in one street and see an ultra-Orthodox marching with an Arabic person and an LGBT community member, both in the same street. So it's a very dense and unique puzzle of cultures. A little bit of demographics. So 75% of Israelis are Jewish. 20% are Arabic, both Muslim and Christian. The language is Hebrew, which is one of the oldest languages in the world. Amongst the Jews, 45% of Israeli Jews are secular, and the rest are somewhere between conservative to religious and Orthodox. Zev spoke a little bit about the currency. So we have a very strong currency, the new Israeli shekel, which is strong versus the euro and the dollar. I spoke earlier, 75% of Israelis are Jews, and most of them, at least at home, eat kosher. So these are the chains in the Israeli market, the most prominent chains. And as you can see, the vast majority of them sell kosher. You'll have a presentation about kosher afterwards, so I leave that topic to Mr. Rabbi Hoffman. But as you can see, the vast majority of the market is selling kosher. Zev spoke about the Israeli economy. You can see some measures of the Israeli economy. It's a strong economy. We've entered the COVID crisis in a very good situation, economic situation, both GDP-wise and employment rates. A little bit about what COVID has done to the economy. You can see we've been affected, but we've been affected less in comparison to other countries in Europe, for example. Our GDP has shrunk less than other countries, and the forecast for next year is quite optimistic. You can see that the consumer expenses shifted towards in-home or indoor activities. There's quite a shift in food purchases, and obviously a decrease in expenses of restaurants, hotels, and traveling. When looking about food, at food expenses, you can see the shift is in the mix. Actually, the food expenses have not risen altogether. It's quite stagnant. But the shift has moved to domestic purchases from out-of-home purchases. You can see people spend more in retail and markets and less than at out-of-home purchases. Food retail in Israel in 2020. So the food market has risen in 9.2%. This is completely coming from a quantity change. The price index has not changed at all. The whole change is coming from a quantity change. People just bought more in the food retail market. This is quite a peak. You can see the average category growth in the past decade or so. You can see that it's a moderate growth, but in the last year, the COVID has impacted the retail market quite favorably. This is the split of players in the market. This is an estimation based on financial reports for 2020. You can see that Shufersal is the largest retailer and growing, and it's accountable for about 50% of the total market growth. The second largest chain is Rami Levi, which also enjoyed quite a nice growth this year. When looking at where this growth is coming from, there is quite a consumer shift to e-com or online food purchasing. Israel is quite strong in online food commerce. Shufersal is the most mature and the most prominent e-commerce food site. And we enjoyed the investment that we've done in the past couple of years in this field. We've grown 52% in a very mature e-commerce market, which currently touches between 20 and 30% of our value sales share. Some consumer trends. I've split it to before COVID and after COVID, because this is 2019 is what I call the normality, or the trend of the actual consumer preferences. You can see that the market is premiumizing. You can see that these are the fastest growing categories in the FMCG market in 2019. You can see a vast and rapid growth in coffee capsules, in functional drinks, in premium cheese and premium cookies. You see that the consumer preferences are going towards a more premium product segments. Just a second. These are two categories that I wanted to highlight that are very rapidly growing in the past 5 years or so. Protein enriched products, you can see the category growth in the past 5 years is a very, very strong double digit. And milk alternatives, you can see the premium, which is also enjoying a very fast growth. This is obviously before COVID. In 2020, we see a shift towards COVID-related or COVID categories. You can see the premium products enjoying the growth also in 2020, but categories like home improvement, COVID products like detergents and disinfectants, and home cooking, which enjoyed a very fast growth in 2020. And now a peek about Shufersal. Shufersal was launched in 1958. We're a publicly traded company in the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, and we're the largest retailer, as you've already seen, and growing. We are at 15 billion shekels this year in 2020. We are a group. So we have the retail formats, we have the mass market retail formats, which are the Shufersal stores in various formats, in convenience stores and in discount stores. We have an orthodox segment, we have a health chain, and also a farm chain that we've acquired 3 years ago, which is called Bee. We also have a very, very strong online business, as you've already seen, a travel business, a real estate business, and a loyalty and credit card division. So we are really a unique case in the online food business. We actually have the highest share worldwide in online. It's over 20% of our total sales in 2020. And we have grown we're growing very, very fast. We've grown 52% in 2020 with the help of the COVID culture, where people moved to, shifted to e-com ordering. And we hold about 70% market share in at least in the food e-commerce, but also in non-food. Our private label is the biggest private label in Israel, obviously, and it's actually the 4th largest supplier in the total market and growing rapidly, much faster than the other players in the market. You can see we are here in the 4th place. We have over 5,000 products in all product categories of the market, from food to near food to non-food. We're actually 30% of Shufersal's share today. And I'll highlight a few categories in which we are leading in the market. So we are a leader in coffee capsules. We've reached a 40% market share in the chain. We've launched a year ago Swiss aluminum coffee capsules, a very premium product, which is very successful in the chain. We're holding over 70% market share in the premium cheese category with our cheese market collection. And we are very strong in innovation. We're actually launching over 700 products yearly. These are some of the innovations that happened in 2020. This is ready-to-cook rice, flavored rice, Mediterranean style. Our food substitute series that have been launched this year. We've actually launched 3 different lines in meat substitutes, which is also a fast-growing categories. We've launched a COVID launch, I call it. It's a disinfected line with a 99.9 bacteria elimination. We are the largest health brand in the entire market. This is an organic and free from brand called Shufisal Green. This is our Passover line. So we have an in and out lines, and maybe Rabbi Hanfan will elaborate about Passover later on. And we are a very significant food importer. We're importing from over 40 countries today. And we're always looking to innovate. We're always looking for new and exciting products to our lineup to be the first one to introduce it to the consumers. And we are also on our way to become a food exporter. So we're basically a one-stop shop to whomever wants a kosher solution. We basically have everything in one place, from frozen to fresh to dry foods, everything in the kosher food world. And that's it. Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity. I hope we can stay in touch and meet in the Gulf Food next month. Yep. And best of luck to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Abdul, should I take it from here?
Yes, please.
Hi.
Okay, thank you.
One moment. Can I say something about Shufisal? Because we are working together a long time. It's very good and personal relation with Corinne, with the general manager, with all the team. And they are really doing a wonderful job. We are cooperating with them with regular goods, with private label, and they are professional. It's a wonderful way to work together. Corinne, congratulations.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you, Ruben, for the kind words. Thank you.
So we had a great presentation by Corinne. And by the way, we're going to send you the presentation, and also along with the contact details of Corinne's team. And you guys can have first access to Supercell, as I mentioned before, is like the biggest retailer market, and you can offer their products and talk about it. And Corinne is still here with us. And later on the Q&A, I know that there's so much exciting questions that you're asking. And later on with the Q&A, you can ask some stuff about where we're importing, what types of products and stuff like that. And I'm going to let Corinne review the questions while we're continuing. So there was a lot of questions about regulations, which is a good thing that we brought Mr. Robert Segel, which is the CEO of Share Consulting and Training. It's a consulting company for the food and beverages import regulations. I can tell you that I'm working with Robert for many years. It's really the leading company here in Israel. By the way, everybody who you can see here, from Yankee, Uven, Corinne, everybody, all those companies are a member at the chamber, and they will all be accessible for you afterwards. Robert, are you here?
Yeah.
All right, so please feel free to take away, and thank you very much.
Yeah, okay, guys. Good morning. Happy to be here. And I'm happy that you have so many regulatory questions for me. So that's a great start. My presentation will focus on the regulations in Israel, and we have quite a vast regulatory system. I'll try to go over it in a few minutes. I'll start with just 2 slides about our company, so get to know us better. So our company was established some 18 years ago. As I've said, we are the leading company in Israel that gives consultancy to the F&B market. Regulatory affairs is my hat for today, but we also deal with food quality and safety issues, environmental care, health and safety issues, and we give a lot of presentations, training, learning opportunities. Nowadays, webinars and all kinds of things that you can do online obviously. We work with many companies. We're proud to be also working with Corinne, her team, and Shufasal as the biggest retail chain, as you heard Corinne's amazing presentation. I imagine that on the right side, you can identify some global brands that we work with, whether here in Israel, imported by various importers or retail chains, and also directly, as I've mentioned before, with companies that just want to export to Israel and want to know and feel the regulatory framework here. So they address us directly. So you can look for yourself for the brands that you know. We are also lecturing, personally I'm lecturing for regulatory affairs in various academic institutions. And on the left side, you can see our very vibrant food tech companies. We have working closely with all kinds of amazing companies that have various solutions to the international market. We're helping them with a very, let's say, challenging issues they have with regulatory affairs, that they are not regular food products, they're innovative. So you can see many of the logos on the left side. So just get right to the issues. And I'm very happy to see that, you know, Aliyah, Usaf, Raji, you had some questions. I hope to answer you in this presentation, and if not, afterwards. I'll just mention that we're proud members of the Chamber of Commerce, as I've said, and I'm a member of the international committee within the Chamber. So happy to be here again. So I call my presentation 10 food commandments, 10 food importing commandments. So as you might know, regulation all over the globe is complex. It's not an easy thing to grasp in 10, 15 minutes. So I'm just going to highlight the things that I think will benefit you the most, and feel free to address me afterwards. So first thing I should say is that the field is full of players. What I mean by that is that we have quite a few players in the regulatory affairs arena. The major player, I think, for most of you would be the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health is the most maybe important or crucial gateway to entering Israel. Of course, it depends on the kind of goods that you're planning to export, but he's the main one that will address you or be in contact with you, or your importers, consultants, and so on, when trying to export to Israel. The second large body that you might meet if you're in the grain business, seeds, all kinds of raw meat, eggs, and so on and so forth, is the Ministry of Agriculture. Again, they have their own system of regulatory affairs that have to do with import. We'll talk a bit about that, mostly about the Ministry of Health. I think it's more relevant for all of you. I'll mention in a few words the Ministry of Economy and Industry, because they play a role also in some of the regulatory affairs. They have their own print on the market. They deal with things that have to do with consumer goods and some regulations there. And we have something that is quite unique. It's not unique by itself. Many countries have a standards institution, but our standards, most of them or many of them in the food arena, are compulsory. So they're not just guidelines or something that you might look at as a professional document, but are really compulsory, and they have a bearing on your products and on their labeling. So it won't be a great surprise for you, I guess, at least those of you who deal with regulatory affairs, but Israeli regulation is complex, and is complex because we have all kinds of laws, regulations, guidelines, general standards, product standards, so many different layers of regulation that you must navigate through. And that's not such an easy job. In 2015, some 5-6 years ago, we had a very fundamental law that entered into force in Israel, and it had a bearing on all the chain, all the food chain, and it has all the, let's say, basic or crucial points that you should know about regulatory affairs. Unfortunately, like many of the regulation in Israel, I'll speak about it in a minute, is in Hebrew. So all the things I'm talking about, unfortunately, for you guys, and happily for me, they're in Hebrew. So you need to know that. Anyway, one of the things that I would recommend you to do, because I'm trying to make it practical for you, that actually you must know your staff. What I mean that you must know your staff is that once you want to enter Israel, and I've seen some questions on the Q&A, you need to know first thing that your product complies. Before you're checking, you know, like labeling and stuff, and maybe a minute after talking with the importers and retailers about the financial feasibility of your exporting to Israel, you need to know that your product complies. Because if not, it's an issue that you must address. So first thing would be if there is a compliance with the product, and secondly will be the labeling compliance. So I'm not talking about taking your own label and asking yourself, well, does it comply? Because it won't. First thing, it should be in Hebrew. But otherwise, other than that, you need to know that Israel has some specific labeling demands. One of which, and one of the, let's say, the most recent ones that came into force really 2 years ago. First step was January 2020. Second step was just a few days ago, 1st of January 2021. We have a new, based on a Chilean law, and we have some red, as you can see, red icons, red labels that must appear on the front of some food packages that have nutritional parameters that are too high according to the Ministry of Health definitions. So what you see here, if you cannot read Hebrew or cannot read Hebrew just yet, so there are three things. One, and you have the illustration in the middle that can help you. On the left side, you can see the kind of the salt thing. So it's high sodium, high salt content. So everything is, with very definite numbers. So if you have more than X number of sodium, of salt in your product, you must put this label in the front of the pack. If you have more than X quantity of saturated fat, that's the second one. And in the lower part of your screen, you have a sugar content, a high sugar content. So this is quite unique to Israel. There are not many countries that have this approach, at least not mandatory. There are some voluntary schemes. So this is one thing that is unique to Israel. So as I talked about product compliance, you might consider knowing that because before you insert your product or you plan of inserting your product to the Israeli market. So this is one thing that you know. But red always, like in traffic lights, come with green. So I have also some good news. So if you're in the raw product market, what I mean by raw is things that are not, have not gone any processes like fruits, vegetables, I don't know, chicken, raw chicken, fish, eggs, and so forth. You might have the opportunity of labeling your products with green label, which the idea is to have the consumers know if your product is recommended for their nutritional needs, or if they should, look at it and ask themselves whether they want to buy it or how much of it they want to buy. So there are some things there that are relevant. As I said, Hebrew, Corinne mentioned it's the oldest language. So we're proud of our language. At the same time, it poses some difficulties for guys like yourself that want to import to Israel. We have very few regulations that were translated to English. So most of them Hebrew. That's an issue. You just need to know that and have somebody help you with that. The fifth point that I would make is, and it's important for you to know, I called it Israeli regulation rules. What I mean by that, many guys that want to export to Israel or that import foods to Israel think and have a misconception that if they export already to the EU or the US or Australia, New Zealand, Japan, whatever, it must comply with Israeli regulation also because, you know, relatively small market. So no, it does not mean that. Yes, our regulation is based on EU, US. We're trying to not to have barriers to trade here. And we're very open to trade and then to importation. But no, you have to comply with Israeli regulation, which means, again, you need to know that. You need to assess your feasibility. And that's not something that you can automatically assume that EU and US means I'll comply. So a bit about the documentation and about the process itself. So first thing that you need to do is have an importer here. So whether it's an importer that, you know, like we represented his own company, one of the biggest leading in Israel, there are others. So you need to have an importer. Other companies later on might open their own representatives. But first thing I would recommend to just, you know, find yourself an importer that you're comfortable with and then go on from there because he's already registered. He can import foods to Israel. You don't need to worry about many of the things I'm talking about now because mainly these big importers know their stuff and they know how to do the things. So if you're not planning on really connecting an importer, you want to be your own importer and have a representative here, there is a technical process that you should go through, but it's really technical besides the fact that you need to have, or at least a storage facility here, whether it's, you know, dry facility or anything to do with frozen, chilled food. The other thing that an importer should do is have a declaration of compliance with the Israeli regulation. As I said, Israeli regulation rules. So importers should know that. They often use consultants like ourselves, or they do it by themselves. But anyway, they should know the regulations in order to help you guys come in the market. 7th point I would make, and asking you not how sensitive you are in your daily lives, but knowing that there is a difference in Israel between what we call regular foods, that's not the language of the law, but they're not sensitive foods. That's the vast majority of foods categories. And there are some foods that are considered to be sensitive. So there are things that you would expect to be sensitive, like dairy products, chilled salads, fish products, and so on and so forth, anything chilled or frozen. But there are some surprises there, like mineral water. So there is a list, actually, that the Ministry of Health issued. There are like 20, 30 kind of foods and category of foods that are considered to be sensitive. And the definition of regular foods is actually non-sensitive. So if you're not on the list, you are regular foods. It's easier to import regular foods to Israel. What I mean irregular is like, you know, pasta, chocolate, bakery products. I've seen somebody ask about that. So most of the foods are regular foods, easier to import. So the import process in 1 or 2 minutes. So both regular foods and sensitive foods are now online submissions. So everything can be done online. Israel is known for technological abilities here also. It's quite new, just a few years, but anything can be done online. The submission of the documents, or if you ask me what kind of documents I need, so I guess it's quite similar to other regulatory system in the world. You need to have a product specification that will have all the characteristics and parameters that you might expect. You have to submit a label. Again, Israel, so Hebrew. You might have some other languages on it, no problem, but Hebrew translation is a must. And you must have all kinds of other certificates like free sale, health certificates, and so on and so forth, depending on your product. So there is some documents to submit there. And there is kind of a small fee for the Ministry of Health, something around $120 and 90, 100 euros, something like that, to pay. When you get to the port, and I'm wrapping up, there is a difference if you're regular food or sensitive food. So for regular foods, and by the way, both have the same submission, same documents required. Difference is that regular foods are not checked by anyone at the Ministry of Health while you submit the request for importations permit. When you get to the port, only 5% of all regular foods will be inspected at the entrance. So what that means that 95% will not be inspected, will just enter the market. Of course, it means a lot of responsibility on you as producer and on the importer, especially to verify that you comply. Sensitive foods are inspected at entrance, at least document-wise, and analysis, certificates of analysis that might be required, done by testing done by yourselves or by the importer here. Lastly, when you get to the promised land, the only thing that you should know is that the regulator here is open to change. We are in the process, and the Chamber of Commerce does a lot to facilitate this process, to go through some regulations of GIP, good importer practice, that will make importation even easier and will open up a kind of a green pathway to Israel for importers and for producers that comply and show a history of compliance. And there is also a great consumer awareness here. Yes, we have some class actions here related to mostly labeling and consumer issues, but again, feasibility, compliance will let you go through it easily. That's it for me. I hope I brought you some benefit with my lecture. Feel free to address me, and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. As always, it's very informative and very helpful. And I don't know if you managed to check the checkbox, but it got exploded. So you're gonna stay tuned with us for the Q&A because we have a lot of work for you. So thank you again, Robert, for this very informative session. And our next session would be on the Kosher certificate, because also a lot of you asked about the kosher. And I'm really honored to present my very good friend and Rabbi Yanki Hoffman. He's the VP of Middle East and Europe and Africa of Starkey Kosher. Is a provider of kosher certification service and consulting services. This is a global company who does kosher certificate worldwide. And I must say that you're very much familiar with the halal. Where kosher, kosher is an advantage. It's not a disadvantage, and it's also not that much of a big of a pain. I hope that I'm speaking the truth. Yanki, maybe you can take it from here. Let's just spotlight Yanki.
Hello. Thank you, first of all, to the Chamber of Commerce from Israel and Dubai for inviting me to this very special webinar. I would like to speak about kosher certification. So first of all, the word kosher. What does kosher mean? So kosher in Arabic is halal, and in English it will be maybe the word approved, allowed to be consumed. When I'm talking about kosher, I'm talking about allowed to be consumed by the Jewish law. Corinne, before in her very nice presentation, showed us that most of the Israeli market defines himself as kosher. And the reason is because Israel is, first of all, a very conservative country, as she showed that 60 or 55% of the country are conservative. But not only that, the conservative and secular are very much mixed. In every secular family, there is some person, a grandmother, a grandfather, a child, a son-in-law that keeps kosher. So it's much easier. It's much easier to maintain somehow a kosher kitchen in the home and avoid non-kosher products. That way, these people that come over can always enjoy their being together with their family. So what is allowed and not allowed in kosher can be a little bit complicated, but in general, kosher is divided into three topics. It is the raw material itself that has to be kosher, and is different between different raw materials. Meat has to be slaughtered in a specific way. Not all kinds of fish are kosher. Dairy is also has to be from a kosher meat origin, and so that's what has to do with the raw material. Second part will be the equipment. The equipment itself cannot be shared between kosher and non-kosher. If I want to use non-kosher equipment in a factory and make a kosher production there, it has to go through kosherizing, and I will be very happy to explain every company that wants to know what it means in specific, because it changes from between every industry. The third part of kosher will be the Jewish rituals. Sometimes these rituals don't really make sense to people that don't know the Jewish law. For example, things that are cooked have to be cooked by a Jew. So it means that someone Jewish has to light the fire or put on the boiler, steam boiler in a factory. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense to people. They don't understand why this person is coming all the way here just to light a fire or something like that. But this is the law, and we are very, very particular with what has to be done in kosher. Until 1983, every person was allowed to decide for himself if the product they're selling is kosher or not. And if they thought it was kosher, they would have wrote the word kosher on the product, and then it will go to the market. In 1983, there was a law that was passed by the Israeli parliament called the Law of Fraud in Kosher. This law basically gave the power to the chief rabbinate of Israel to decide what product is kosher or not kosher. And for that reason, every product that comes into Israel has to come into Israel with a kosher certification that is approved by the chief rabbinate of Israel. If a factory sends a product to Israel and it's written kosher on it, and the kosher certification is not a certification that is approved by the chief rabbinate of Israel, the product will be stopped in the custom and not be allowed into Israel. Starkey Kosher is one of the largest kosher certification bodies. We have offices also in Dubai, but in Palestine, in Israel, in several countries in the Middle East, in Europe, in Africa, in US, and in the Far East. And we certify more than 1 million products globally. We were invited to the UAE just as the normalization started by the executive office to help regulating kosher in Dubai. We certify hotels, chains. We just had an MOU signed with Jabza, DP World, and we will be very, very happy to help all of your companies go through a kosher certification process. The kosher certification, as I explained, could be a little bit complicated, but one of the good parts of Starkey is that we try to take the complex to us. We try to simplify whatever can be simplified. It's very, very easy to become kosher. We are in the UAE, in Dubai quite often. Personally, I will be in Dubai in the next 2 weeks. And after this webinar, application for Starkey will be shared with all of you. I thank you very, very, very much for inviting me and listening about kosher. it will be my real pleasure to help every company and consult every company that has questions about kosher certification in person.
Thank you very much, Yankee. Please stay with us because we're going to have a lot of...
If I may add something.
Please feel free.
I'm listening to Rabbi and to all the others, and very, very professional. But I want you, all my friends in Emirates, Dubai, to know that in Israel there are more than one organization for kosher that is doing all this, because we could not bring everyone to this presentation. There is one OU, OK, and others that are doing this, and the Chamber of Commerce personally are in very, very good contact directly with the chief rabbinate of Israel and the import division in Israel, as well as all the others that are using them, as Shuprasal, as all other chains. And they are doing, for example, in our company personally, we have a rabbi in the company that is taking care of all the kosher certifications.
All the big companies have their own rabbi, which is bridging between the kosher organizations and the
and the chief rabbinate and the suppliers abroad. For example, the company that we are going to start business in Dubai there, I was shocked, let's say surprised, that they have a kosher certificate. I think it's OU or something. And really I have the kosher certificate in, sorry.
But
I would like to say that in the UAE, the law of who is allowed to certify kosher is not only depending on the Israeli law. In the UAE, kosher certification that wants to certify kosher in the UAE must be certified by an organization called ESMA. It's a local organization in the UAE. Starkey is the only international kosher certification that is approved by ESMA. And we work very, very closely with the Dubai municipality. And we are available on Food Watch system, which is probably known to all of the companies here.
Yankee, I'm just gonna cut you off, everybody here, because we just want to be mindful on the time and have the Q&A session. So again, thank you very much, Yankee. Thank you very much for all the clarifications. There's a lot of kosher foods, and I want you to stay with us just so we can answer some of them and to get from your expertise. So let's just sum up what we had until now. We talked a little bit about regulation. We highlighted the kosher, and we understand a little bit about where's the market. Now there's a lot of questions both on regulation, koshers, and obviously about the market size, market size potential. We want to try to maybe have some sort of a discussion. So please feel free to send us a little bit more questions, whether you have. Hopefully we can address everybody. But I just do want to say the following. This is not a one-off thing. We're starting, as I mentioned before, we are in a great, strong partnership with the Dubai Chamber, with the F&B group. So we're going to work with them in order to accommodate you. In the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to see business. We want to see you guys doing business, and our companies are doing business. And this is what we want to do. We want to create those kind of stuff. The food import potential is more than $7 billion a year in Israel. It's growing. As you can see with the trend, there's going to be much more population. The economy is going to do much better. And in general, I think that there's a huge potential to export much more food and products and goods from the UAE, whether it's packaging, whether it's food, beverages, whatever it is, from the UAE to Israel. So now the next thing we're going to do is to help as well. And some people asked a little bit if we can help them with the importers and stuff like that. Later on, we will send an email with all the presentation, with all the contact details, with the LinkedIn profile, so you can get in touch with everything. And then you can also get to the F&B group and the Dubai Chamber and get our contact details and reach out directly. So let's start with some questions. I'm gonna hand it over to you, Robert. You saw a little bit of the questions that were there. You want to address one of them specifically?
Ziva, before I just wanted to ask just a first question from my side. How long does a company practically have to take to actually enter the Israeli market from your previous experience? The time frame, the effort required, and what's the time frame required? I'm sure this is a question in the mind of all the manufacturers here.
I can answer it from my angle, from if you're, from my experience in the private brand, it takes about 6 to 9 months.
So is this all going into regulation approvals, or is it going into
most of it is regulation, is the licensing of the product with the Ministry of Health. That's it. I mean, the majority of the time is the licensing.
Okay.
Well, I can add on that. About the time frame, it really depends on your product, if it's regular product or sensitive product, first of all. If it's really a regular sensitive or non-sensitive product, it's easier. And it depends really on your readiness as a company, as a producer. What I mean by that is if you have the documentation required for submission. So if you have the quality and food safety certificates, if you have the specifications that are mature enough, so-called, and you know what to do. So yeah, as Colin said, it takes time. You need to translate the labels. There is a ping pong for specifications, issues, contaminants, stuff like that. But once it's submitted, as I said, regular foods are online, and it's a very quick process. Nobody really looks through I'm talking from the Ministry of Health, doesn't look into the documentation at this stage. The importers do, Korean guys will, we will, but the regulator won't. Frozen, chilled, other sensitive foods, much more complicated. As you know, they look into it, they might have questions, requirements, stuff like that. So it will take more time. So yes, there is a few months of that.
We have a similar system here. So I think we do relate to it, but the time frame is something that was of interest to everybody to know.
It also depends on how you work to make the factory kosher, right? Because sometimes you need to change some of the ingredients, to source new kosher materials for production. So it kind of depends on that. But the kosher organizations can help link you with sourcing of kosher ingredients. So that could make it shorter.
Right. Corinne, Robert, we're gonna get back to you one second, okay. But I'm gonna stay with Corinne for a second. So there's a question from Disha to saying to Corinne, what does the retail environment look like for someone who wants to display their self-owned brand in supermarket? What is the listing fees? Are there any rebates? If so, at what %? Maybe you can go into those details.
Yes, I think it's too specific for this forum, and there's also a food law in the country for large retailers. We don't take any commissions to place products in the assortment. But then again, to launch your own brand, first of all, it needs to be in Hebrew. It needs to have a unique labeling, and it needs to overgo. We have a special, committee that decides which products to go into in the chain's lineup. So.
Right. Okay, thank you, Corinne. I'm just going to say, for those of you who are asking about specific products in terms of VAT or custom duties, so the chamber is connected to the custom data. So if you will send us AGIS codes, again, as part of the collaboration with the Dubai Chamber and the FNG Group, if you send us AGIS codes, we can tell you data of where this product is being imported, from where, which quantities, and what's the customs. Robert, do you want to take a few regulations? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I looked at your questions. Thank you for all of you for asking. So first of all, Raji, you asked about labeling. I think you had 2 questions. So yeah, the stickers, the red stickers I've shown should be in Hebrew. That's obvious, and there are quite a few labeling demands. I didn't go through it, but we have a special standard for pre-packed foods. We have our specific standards for different categories, and we have other Ministry of Health regulations for labeling. So it's quite a complex issue. For Nassif and Barat, which asked about, is it possible to have a sticker and not have the whole package in Hebrew? Yes, it is. It is possible, you can do that. There are some regulations there, but you can do that. It obviously saves money, saves time. By the way, some of the work can be done here in Israel. The registered importers can do that for you. You can do that in UAE, both acceptable. Nassif, regarding the organic certificate, yes, you need to have an organic certificate. We have in the Ministry of Health a branch that deals with organic foods. They have some procedures there, and they do recognize some international certificates. So we can look quickly if you want afterwards. Alia, about your question, standards, yes, you can buy them. They're not very expensive. You can buy them online from the Standards Institution of Israel, but again in Hebrew. Only some of them would be in English, so you need to translate. And going to Aridam's question about translation, yes, we can translate that for you. There are a lot of other regulations, Alia, that are free. So most of the regulation is free online. Again, sorry for that, in the name of the nation, but they're in Hebrew again. So only small part of it would be in Hebrew. You can address the Ministry of Health website. You'll see some English information in English there, but not even nearly all the regulations you need to know. Again, Alia, about legalizing your certificates and documentation. If it's a translation, and obviously it should be if you have it in Arabic, but if it's in English or if it's translated to Hebrew, it should be signed by a notary. So yes, there is an issue there. Barat, I think that, first of all, your question about the snacks, potato snacks, yes, they're regular foods, as long as it's not chilled and not anything else, just regular, potato chips, snacks. It's regular food, so you're easier there. The meaning of the green label that I talked about, well, it's an issue. It's new in Israel, so there are no market research yet how much attention the market gives, by the way, to the red symbols and to the green symbols. So if guys here buy, some snacks or some cakes or some, savory products, pastries, nobody expects them to be like, the best for your diet, So if it's red label, you just buy them because you want to indulge yourself in something tasty. So I'm not sure that, there is a decline and then it went up again. We looked into the Chilean market, by the way, and also there was a decline when the regulation came into force there, and then things came up. I think that carbonated or sugared carbonated drinks still down, but that's a trend anyway. Corinne talked about trends. So yes, the health food, so to speak, alternatives and the proteins and other stuff like that, enriched foods are very welcome.
Robert, I'm gonna intervene for a second. Just want to go back and go to Yankee. Obviously, we needed to do a separate session only on regulations, but we're gonna go. Okay. We're gonna go back to you, Yankee. A few questions to you, just really quickly. So first of all, is rice require kashrut? That is one question. There's so many questions. I lost the other questions. Someone is asking if which level of kosher to be certificate to for edible oils and vegetables? Ghee, I think I respect. Not sure. And can you elaborate on kosher equipment, particularly not sharing kosher and non-kosher production? So rice. What level of kosher to be certified edible oil and vegetable, and if about the koshering equipment, particularly not sharing kosher and non-kosher production.
Okay, so again, as I said, the regulation in Israel is that if you write the word kosher on the product, it must be approved by the Chief Rabbinate of Israel. It must be kosher by a kosher organization that is approved by the Chief Rabbinate of Israel. So even though rice is a very simple product to kosherize, Yet, if it's going to be declared as kosher, it has to have kosher certification. Regarding oils, if we're talking about vegetable oils, in nature, vegetables are kosher. And the oil, in the oil industry, there are some sensitive issues for kosher. First of all, the enzymes. Many times in the oil industry, there are enzymes being used. Not all of the enzymes are kosher. So we have to make sure that the enzymes are kosher. Second of all, many times there is a stabilizer, a citric acid that is non-kosher for Passover. So if we're talking about specifically the week of Passover, oils are a little bit more problematic. And the biggest problem with oil is that if we are using the same machinery to refine kosher oils with non-kosher oils. And now it's very important to talk about the next question that you asked about ghee. Ghee is oil made out of butter. Okay, so ghee can be kosher, but the regulations in Israel are the chief rabbinate of Israel, who basically makes the regulations of kosher, are quite hard on dairy products, even though in between the dairy products, butter is one of the easier items, but still, if we're talking about ghee is a little bit more problematic to make kosher. And if the refinery is refining in the same equipment, vegetable oil and ghee, then the vegetable oil will also be problematic for kosher. So then I go back to the equipment, the question of the equipment. We cannot stop a factory from using their own equipment to produce whatever they want. But if they want to produce a kosher item on the non-kosher equipment, then we have to clean the equipment in a way that is applied by the Jewish law. Most of the time, it means that it will be sterilized in very hot water. And equipment that have a problem with high temperatures or water can face quite big problems with the kosherizing way, how basically we kosher equipment between non-kosher and kosher items.
All right. Because we have a lot of questions, and I'm not sure how much we can answer everything, but we'll get there. I have a few questions. I want to circle back to Corinne, and then go back another Robert and another Yankee. So first of all, there's a few questions about the market here. First of all, they're asking about what is the minimum shelf life requirement to be considered at the time of
so it really depends on the product. As I said, we're present in all the product groups in retail, basically. We considered importation starting from about 3 months shelf life, more or less. It really depends on the product and how much it is a fast mover.
Right. Okay, thank you.
A good advantage of Dubai is that we can have a land transport, which we cannot do from Europe. In Europe, it's only shipping, ocean shipping. And I think, we're not importing from Dubai yet, but I think the land transportation will make the import process faster.
Also, I'm going to follow up question with you if you're already here. Is there any opportunity for wheat flours? There are opportunities for wheat flours?
Sure.
Okay.
We're currently buying it domestically, but we're very open to suggestions.
Cool. And by the way, Corinne, we were talking also about other products that you feel, the categories that you feel that would be relevant. If you want to highlight them.
We're looking for vegetable oils, for enriched vegetable oils, but only in a super kosher, in a high kosher level, to offer it to a majority of customers. Since it's a very mass market product.
I have a question. See, suppose, the entry to getting it kosher certified is quite high, and therefore there is an investment that that the companies have to do.
No, in dry foods, there's hardly any investments. You just need to clean the line between one production and the other.
Sure. So is there any opportunity beyond Israel if you actually get it kosher certified? What is the market opportunity?
The US.
The US.
Okay.
Big market. Europe. Some of Europe. Yeah, of course. Kosher is
the US is a giant kosher market.
US and Israel are the bigger kosher markets, but I will surprise most of you, and I will tell you that the UAE is also becoming a very important market, because we are working very closely with the hotels, with the caterings, with the different
HoReCa sector.
HoReCa sector, and different chains that are planning to open kosher sections inside their supermarkets. And of course, they will be much happier to buy locally. I would like to just say a few more words about the term that Corinne just said, which is called super kosher. There are basically, it's big, but basically there are two different categories of kosher. There are international kosher certifications, and they are super kosher certifications, which are mainly organizations that are the ultra-Orthodox communities inside Israel or inside the US. As Starkey Kosher, as one of the leaders of the kosher market, we collaborate with most of the super kosher organizations, and we are able to help all the companies that are interested to be super kosher to become super kosher. One more topic that is very important, you asked now about the cost of becoming kosher. The cost of becoming kosher is very low. It's not high unless you're talking about very, very sensitive products like meat that have to have local slaughters or things like that. But if we're talking about the majority of the products, first of all, the raw materials have to be kosher, then the equipment has to be kosher. We visit a few times a year just to make sure that the kosher rules are maintained. Very similar to what halal certification is doing, and it shouldn't be very costly for the companies.
That is great. I'm gonna go Reuven, because Reuven has one of the biggest chocolate companies in Israel, both in distribution and also in import and stuff like that. There's a few questions about chocolate. First of all, like if it's, I'm gonna take it from you, Robert, but you can also answer whether it's a regular food or sensitive food. But also, what's the market size? Because I remember, Reuven, Israel is one of the biggest chocolate consumers in the world in terms of per capita or whatever. They consume a lot of chocolate.
Zev, you have a mistake. Israel is not the biggest one in the world and not between the biggest one. That is a good thing because the potential is big. If we would be between the biggest one, we don't have any more potential. Now I want to come back to several questions regarding kosher. I was in the supermarket there during my visit. And by the way, all the food that we have with our delegation, 73 people, was kosher. Also in the desert Sahara, when we went with the jeeps in the evening, we have everything kosher. And that means that the potential of kosher food in the Emirates is very big. I heard that there is a chance that there will be also some partners, Israeli partners, for this activity in the Emirates. Number one. Number two, you need badats for special kosher, what Corinne said before, in order to enter some chains in Israel that also Shupasan, Rami Levi and others have, or Osherad, you need a very, very special kosher certificate and not OU or K or any others. You need a special kosher, and that is from Khatam Sofer, badats, as well as others. We are getting those kosher certificates. And the potential for this is big because you must understand the high religious people, strong religious, how you want to call them, are about 12.5% of the Israeli population, and they have a lot of children. That means a regular family in Israel is about 2.9, 3.1, let's say 3 children. They have 8, 10, and 12. That means that they are growing much quicker than the regular population. And if you want to reach them, you need a very, very special kosher certificate. And that's another way of getting the certificate. I have a lot of experience with this, and our rabbi in the company have the experience and are doing it. Now, any more questions, or
we'll move forward. Robert, maybe we can, we'll come back to you, Ruben, because we're running out of time. So really am I right, Abdul?
Yeah, we will actually, we'll have a summary of all the questions answered, and we'll send that FAQ to frequently asked questions to everybody, along with the thank you note and the summary of this thing.
Right.
So, Mr. Saleh, if you want to have any closing remarks before we actually, your observations on the meeting.
First of all, I really thank the engagement of all the participants and the speaker who we have today. This shows that there is a good interest of our members, our companies, to start exporting. One thing I've noticed that it looks like it is a long process for a product to be exported. I wasn't thinking that it would require 9 months for a product to be exported to Israel. I thought it would be shorter. So what I would be recommending, Levi and Wahid, to create a mechanism where we can shorten the process and make sure that we help our members with clear process of what exactly they need to do to be able to export to Israel. Where I think we need to add value to our members.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Saleh. Over to you, Zevi.
Okay, so I just want to, Ruben, if you want to say some thank you notes, and then we can conclude.
Okay. First of all, thank you all of you for this opportunity. I think it's a good opportunity. By the way, it has 2 ways, not only import, also export from Israel. And from Israel, we can export to other countries. For example, our company, we have an export division. We are importing, for example, some products like sweets, and we are exporting it to the United States and to Europe for special kosher population. Another thing, we have also other opportunities to import. In my meeting there in the Emirates, I met a company that is producing plastic or carton, and we have another company of my children that they are doing it. It's called Allpack, and they are in contact with them, and they are also starting to import from there. This lady in charge there was working in the past in Turkey, so there is a good combination. Health food. There is a good opportunity to help, as Corinne said, health food is a very, very big potential for the present and for the future especially. I don't want to make too much about our company, but we have another company doing it with this also, importing, distributing health products. Now, I will ask Zeev or Shulamit to send you the presentation of us and to see 2 things you need, 3 things you need: quality, good prices, and most important thing, good distribution. If you have all these 3, you are a winner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ruben. And Abdul, before maybe you can conclude, I will just say, again, thank you for everybody. Thank you for all the speakers, but especially thank the F&B sector group team, to you, Abdul, to the chairman, to everybody that worked here, and to the Dubai Chamber. Really, we're very much happy, and we are planning on coming to bring an importers delegation to the Gulf Food, so hopefully we can meet everybody in person, and until then we'll continue to work with the F&B group and the Dubai on personal. So thank you, Abdul. Maybe you can conclude.
Thank you, Zevi. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. And as I said, we are here to support. Most of us are now on digital organizations. So we have Zoom rooms where you can meet, and together with partners from Israel, we'll be actually enabling our manufacturers to expand their markets globally. You know that UAE manufacturing is one of the best and has the highest quality and standards. The quality and standards that we have set up and the regulations that we have set up will be a good stepping stone towards export markets. At the maximum time, we had more than 100 people attending this meeting. So I think it has been very effective. Thank you very much for all of us to work as a team And going forward, we look forward to working as a team to make our future endeavors successful. Thank you, Mr. Saleh. Thank you, Mr. Salman, for all the support. Thank you, Dubai Chamber. Thank you, Federation of Chamber of Israel. Thank you very much.